let's start with TikTok. As I said, this is years in the making at this point. Now that we have some sort of conclusion, would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, it has been a long time. I served as CEO in 2020, and things have changed a lot since then. Back then, the administration was trying to ban the app, went into purgatory for 5 years, and now it's come back out. So I have to say to the guys at TikTok, to my friend Shou Chu, who's the CEO now, well done. It's about time this was behind us, and I think we're all much better served as a result.
And I'm always curious, I mean, I'm a power user of TikTok for better or for worse, and I'm always curious about how the user experience might change. I mean, taking a look at the details of this deal, it sounds like you're in touch, of course, with the current CEO. I mean, do you think that it'll be operated and experienced any differently now under this ownership group?
Well, I don't expect the actual interface to change. It'll be fully interoperable, as I understand it, with the global TikTok, outside of China, obviously. I don't expect there to be a big noticeable difference in any capacity, other than I think the algorithm is going to be retrained on all just US data. That might end up affecting some For You pages in some ways that is really hard to predict. But I do think the table is set for this to be, for all the security issues to be resolved, for users in the United States to be very happy to use the app without any apprehension whatsoever. And I just think it'll be roughly the same. And I think the team in the US is going to see to that.
I am curious, though, too. I mean, we talk about TikTok, and really you can just put all social media in this category, and just the changes in the way that we I guess, access content and consume that content. And given your past roles, particularly at Disney and particularly in that sort of direct consumer business and the rollout of what is now ubiquitous when it comes to streaming, is that in competition with each other, meaning what we're seeing on that side relative to what we're seeing on the social media side, or are they or can they be complementary?
Well, I think there's a little bit of both. Honestly, that's the right answer. I think that in terms of time and attention, especially younger people, the younger cohorts in this country and around the world, tend to spend more time with vertical videos, social media entertainment, like TikTok, like YouTube, like Instagram. There's a lot of time spent there. And to the extent that there's always contention and competition for people's time and attention, I think that does have a bit of an effect on traditional media, even streaming. However, the use cases are also somewhat different. Streaming services tell long-form stories, traditional television length and movie length storytelling under brands and franchises and characters and IP that people know and love from the traditional media world. That doesn't change. It doesn't completely overlap with what's happening on a TikTok per se. But I do think that over time, you're going to see just a competition for people's time. There's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
So that is where these things kind of overlap.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a reminder. We had Netflix earnings earlier this week, and every quarter they always sort of put those clauses in that release talking about who they're really competing against. But it raises a question too, just about the future of these larger media companies, and we talk about, obviously your past at Disney, and of course Disney this week said they are going to finally make an announcement as to who is going to succeed Bob Iger. And my question to you isn't so much who you think it will be, but what type of person do you think it should be to lead a company like Disney, which has such a deep and revered legacy media business, but at the same time has to adapt for what is now a new, more social media forward media landscape?
Look, it has to have a forward-thinking and forward-looking CEO. I think both the candidates that are being talked about, Dana Walden and Josh D'Amaro, both are excellent. They can fulfill the needs at Disney. It's a very highly complex operating company, especially on the theme park side, where Josh D'Amaro is expert. But it intersects with Hollywood and that whole ecosystem where Dana is the expert too. So look, I think one of them will get the role. Disney will be well served by either one, but they both need to be really forward thinking, lean into social media, lean into short form storytelling. Like that hits a company like Disney across the board. People want to interact with entertainment programming in slightly different ways, but especially in the sports on the ESPN side. I don't think a lot of young people sit through most full games anymore. So they sort of ingest and enjoy sports in a different way. So it has to be changed. There has to be a leaning forward into that and embracing that new environment by whoever becomes CEO.
Well, Kevin, I'll ask what Romain didn't. Who do you think will be the next CEO?
Look, the good news is we're all going to find out within weeks, I think. That's the time frame we're looking at here. So the years-long sort of contemplation about this will come to an end. They're going to make the right choice. I think from what I've observed from the process, I think James Gorman is firmly in charge. He did a great job at Morgan Stanley. Whoever it is, it'll be done right. I think they'll try to keep both executives because, as I said, they have complementary skill sets and experiences. Be great to keep both of them. I personally don't see a co-CEO role happening there, but I do think that keeping both in the company is important.
Well, speaking of large media companies, I do want to get your thoughts on whatever the heck is going on for the bidding for Warner Brothers Discovery. Obviously, Netflix thinks it has the upper hand with regards to the financial terms of its offer. I think Paramount Skydance thinks it might have the upper hand with regard to some of the other issues here. When you look at what David Ellison is trying to do here and the prolonged fight that he seems to be willing to make to go after that, does that seem wise to you? I mean, who do you think would be a better steward, if you will, of Warner Brothers Discovery and its legacy?
Well, look, that's a good question. They're stewards in different ways. If you want to think about Netflix from their perspective, they'd love to have access, permanent access, advantaged access to all the content and all the franchises that Warner Brothers Discovery brings to the table for their streaming customers, and having HBO Max added to the Netflix subscriber base doesn't hurt either. So I think there's a good strategic rationale there. On the Paramount side, scale is all important. That's why these consolidations are happening. Scale in the face of declining revenues, which is happening because pay TV is going away in favor of streaming, which is not as profitable as an ecosystem, as an industry. When that transition from pay TV to streaming, it's causing consolidation to happen. So smaller subscale players like Paramount need to find scale. So it's urgent for them also. Look, I'm simply surprised that Paramount hasn't upped the ante already. At this point, you'd think that Paramount would have upped their bid to something higher than 30. My gut tells me 34, 35 is what might take it. They're reluctant to do it. There is a price at which it's too expensive, the asset too. So I'm looking for the final stakes to be known in the next, at least in a month, not more than a month. I would expect. And I do think Paramount is going to have to up their bid to be competitive here.